off today, I want to talk about something very important. We're seeing devastation take its toll across this country. We've been talking about it. We've been paying very close attention to this devastation. And it is going to have lasting repercussions to society and most definitely to our economy. Repercussions that all too often, it seems right now, are either misunderstood or is being swept under the rug intentionally. And then you even have some who have the audacity to defend the riots and the looting. I want to start today by playing a clip here on one of the news programs of New York Times Magazine's Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is also the founder of the Times' 1619 Project. And this is what she had to say when asked about the violence happening across the country.
One, we need to be really careful with our language. Yes, it is disturbing to see property being destroyed. It is disturbing to see people taking property from stores. But these are things. And violence is when an agent of the state kneels on a man's neck until all of the life is leached out of his body. Destroying property which can be replaced is not violence. And to put those things, to use the exact same language to describe those two things, I think really it's not moral to do that. So yes, I think any reasonable person would say we shouldn't be destroying other people's property, but these are not reasonable times. These are people who have protested against police violence again and again and again, year after year after year, and still we can have videos of law enforcement with witnesses nonchalantly taking the life of a man for the alleged crime of passing a fake $20 bill. So when we have people who say that people should respect the law, they're not respecting the law because the law is not respecting them. You can't say that regular citizens should play by all of the rules when agents of the state clearly are not.
Property which can be replaced is not violence. Destroying property which can be replaced is not violence. Let's set aside for a moment the fact that many Americans have already died as a result of these riots. We will talk about it tomorrow, including unarmed black men by gunfire from rioters. A 21-year-old, a 29-year-old, 77-year-old. Let's set aside for a moment the fact that multiples have died as a result of these riots that are supposedly because of the atrocious, vile death, murder of one man. Let's put that aside for a moment. We'll address that tomorrow. And look at the economic devastation. The untold economic devastation that we're seeing across the country right now. I mean, it is absolutely staggering when we think about what has been happening across this country. Destruction of hundreds of businesses lost amidst all the violence. Yes, violence. We had Rick French on the other day. Rick is co-owner of a business in downtown Raleigh. And he was scared for his life, had to call in his nephew, who I believe is a police officer in another town, and ask his nephew to come protect his property and his life. You had people there who literally were there to defend their property, meaning their lives were at risk. We showed video on Monday of an elderly woman standing up outside of her business being beaten to protect their property. Government exists to protect individual rights first and foremost, and that most definitely includes the right to property, to things that you own yourself as an individual. In fact, the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, was parroted from John Locke's Life, Liberty, and Property. So the economic devastation is untold. And yet we have this attitude. Let's put up pick one. We have this attitude from some that the economy will bounce back because of the rebuilding. Fox Business had an article in which they say this: while there's no situation where this is a good thing, the U.S. economy may actually see a boost due to the rebuilding that will occur following the riots, Dutta said, Dutta being an expert that they interviewed. This is sort of your classic hurricane-style shock, where you have a delay in activity, and then things pick up, and then there's a rebuilding process that actually boosts GDP, Dutta said. The destruction in wealth doesn't necessarily impact GDP, but the rebuilding does. Destruction in wealth. Destruction in wealth is not something that you can just instantly restore, and it is about building wealth in an economy. How do you think income is made possible? By creating things of value, which is wealth. This is a common fallacy. This idea that the economy will benefit after a crisis. It's not new to the current situation where some say, oh, well, it's just property that we're losing right now. It can be replaced. Never mind the economic damage because, well, we're going to recover and we'll rebuild, and the rebuilding will help boost the economy. Let's go to pick two. And here in pick two, this is back in 2013 after floods hit Colorado. Brian Lewandowski, a research assistant at the Business Research Division at CU, said natural disasters present an interesting paradox. The property loss and the business loss is short-term, and we see this economic boom after we can get back on our feet and start rebuilding, he said. An economic boom that will come from rebuilding. That's why they think this is okay in part. We'll rebuild and suddenly the economy will get better. Well, let's put up cut two. Look at this, a Mercedes-Benz dealership in Oakland, California, being ravaged by these so-called protesters. Literally burning these cars and vandalizing them and destroying that dealership. It seems to hurt the richest, right? Oh, you're just going after those cars. In fact, there's another dealership elsewhere where 50 cars worth total $3 million were stolen by rioters. That can all be replaced because that's just property, right? And there are rich people who buy those cars, so they'll be okay. But consider the other things that would happen. The dealership, which actually purchased those vehicles from Mercedes-Benz, and then the idea is that they will sell it, they're an authorized dealer to sell to customers. They'll get insurance payouts, sure, but not the retail value that they would get, especially after paying out deductibles for insurance on those vehicles. The business will also be down until the shop is repaired. Who knows how long that could take? They could even decide, hey, let's move it. Let's move this dealership to another state. That would mean less tax revenue and fewer jobs. The coffee store, the local coffee store down the street, across from the Mercedes-Benz dealership, if there is one, I'm sure there's something nearby. Some of their best customers will not show up anymore. At least not for a while if they're rebuilding, or if they move it, they'll never come back. Lost jobs, lost tax revenue. We're talking about things that will hurt lower income Americans in those communities like Oakland, California. No sales commissions for workers. Finance deals, bank loans, things that will be missed out because of this. Secretaries at these dealerships out of work, needing a repair crew. And it can have ripple effects. All these destroyed vehicles and businesses add up to something eye-popping in terms of insurance claims as well. Insurance claims that we're now seeing go astronomical, especially in these areas. And as a result, your insurance rate's going to go up if you live, especially if you live in any of these areas being heavily hit. Because even after people weren't driving and getting into car accidents, now there's much more destruction, far more expensive insurance claims. It's going to be passed on to the consumers. They will have no choice at these businesses. In other words, what we have going on here is what's called the broken window fallacy. Let's put up pick 3. The late economist Frederick Bastiat in 1850 published a treatise entitled That Which is Seen and That Which is Not Seen. And he wrote this about the broken window fallacy. Quote, "But if, on the other hand, you come to the conclusion, as is too often the case, that it is a good thing to break windows, that it causes money to circulate, and that the encouragement of industry in general will be the result of it, you will oblige me to call out, 'Stop there! Your theory is confined to that which is seen. It takes no account of that which is not seen. It is not seen that as our shopkeeper has spent 6 francs upon one thing, he cannot spend them upon another. It is not that if he had not had a window to replace, he would perhaps have replaced his old shoes or added another book to his library. In short, he would have employed his 6 francs in some way, which this accident has prevented.'" That is to say, according to Bastiat, and rightly so, the broken window fallacy is where you think, oh my gosh, devastation has happened. But guess what? There will be people who will have to fix it up. There will be people who have to do the repairs. And those people who do the repairs will get paid. And they'll go out and they'll spend and they'll benefit the economy. But what would those business owners have done? What would those business owners have done if not for the devastation with that money? They wouldn't have just put it under their mattress or added a book to their library, as Bastiat said. They would have invested it. They would maybe be able to keep their workers employed, be able to reopen finally, as so many of these businesses have been set aside because of government policies. Finally, companies were going to reopen. I was talking to one business in downtown Denver. Guy's a franchise owner of 4 different locations, including 2 in downtown Denver. Those 2, he says, they've been sending their workers home early, meaning fewer hours for the staff, and they have consistently had their windows destroyed. Now they've got to spend money on repairs, on these other things, and they're not paying their workers. And yet people like Nicole Hannah-Jones of the New York Times either don't understand this, and it's entirely possible, a lot of economic illiteracy in America, or they don't care. They're just using this for political points, as opposed to a recognition that real people's lives, including those they claim to be standing up for, are being decimated by this. It's tragic. And it is the broken window fallacy in action, especially as we showed, as economists actually are already saying that this destruction is going to lead to economic growth because of the repairs. Sure, maybe according to GDP, a false, troubling, weak measure of economic growth, but there's a lot more to an economy than just GDP and what that number purportedly shows. Thanks for watching this clip from Jimmy at the Crossroads. You do not want to miss a minute of engaging, intelligent talk. Subscribe today to the Jimmy at the Crossroads YouTube channel, and you'll be sure to catch our live broadcast. I appreciate your support.
I got Jimmy at the crossroads, making sense out of no sense. Yeah.